We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday. Got a lot to talk about, a lot of shit happening. We're less than a week before the election on November 5th. We have another guest with us today. It is Tony from South Carolina. You're used to seeing him. He's been here many times before. Something I didn't know. Of course, we had Will on yesterday as kind of a response to those attacks on Puerto Rican folks. And I find out now that Tony is, in fact, Puerto Rican too. So it seems reasonable to have yet another view from the Puerto Rican community.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to cover the same things that Will covered. Obviously, the rally in Madison Square Garden, which was where I grew up in New York, was freaking awful. I'm very familiar with Puerto Rico. My family is still pretty much there. I had to evacuate my brother just before Hurricane Maria because my mother was in the hospital and she was his caretaker. So, and then after Maria, of course, Trump's response to Puerto Rico for that particular disaster was almost nil. So he's been on a roll hitting the Puerto Ricans in that island for a long time. And frankly, any Puerto Rican that would vote for a Republican, never mind Trump, you don't seem to get it. I mean, obviously, you're not very intelligent, but I think from a political sense, eh, I couldn't ask for a better thing to happen during this election. He insulted Puerto Ricans. Puerto Ricans are, as you can tell by looking through TikTok films and the media and everything, are very passionate people. They love themselves. They're very warm. They're very generous. And now they're insulted. And this is going to hurt him in all the places you think it's going to hurt him: New York, Florida, Pennsylvania for sure, and out in the Midwest, where I have some relatives out in Illinois and a couple others in Michigan. So, stupid. It was a stupid move. It didn't need to happen, but it just again shows exactly who Trump is and who he surrounds himself with. Supposedly, the comic was vetted, so there was no excuse for that to even be close to happening. And the comic is going to hopefully be canceled out with any luck.
Yeah, well, there, as I understand it, there are 5.5 million Puerto Ricans in this country, all of which have the ability to vote. 400,000 in Pennsylvania, a few 100,000 in Florida. And then you got to throw in the Haitians he insulted and put in danger. There's a lot of Haitians in Florida. He's done, this is what I've always said. People say, well, he could win. Since 2020, he's done nothing but lost votes. He's done nothing to gain votes. And these last couple of things with the Haitians and the Puerto Ricans have been just fucking ridiculous. It's like he's almost trying to lose on purpose. Now, I will say something. You were talking about the comedian who made these comments, and people will say, well, Donald Trump didn't say that. Well, Donald Trump ascribed to what he did by putting him on the stage. He was vetted. There was one, we know he was vetted because there was one joke, and I use that term loosely, that was cut from his set. And that was because he was going to refer to Kamala Harris as the C word. They thought the C word was too far, but calling Puerto Rico an island of garbage in the ocean was just fine. So they knew about it. Then Donald Trump was asked about it yesterday, and he says, oh, I don't even know the guy. I don't even know the guy. And JD Vance said, I don't know if it was racist or not. I didn't even hear it. I mean, this is how they react to things like this. But the fact of the matter is they knew all about it. And Donald Trump made the most egregious mistake here. What he should have said was, I cannot believe what he said. I discredit that. I don't have anything to do with that. That'll never happen again. That's what he should have said. But Donald Trump is a narcissist, so he can't say that. And because he didn't say that, he might as well have supported it or endorsed it, because he didn't even have the wherewithal to do the right fucking thing about it. It would have been an easy thing for him to do, but he still cannot do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Well, he never apologizes. He
No.
always uses what he did with David Duke. I don't know the guy. His plan for 2025. I don't know who they are. I don't know why they wrote it. I have nothing to do with it. It's always the same thing. He's like a child caught with his hand
Absolutely.
in the cookie jar, right? He's pulling out the cookie. Are you in the cookie jar, son? No, I don't know anything about the cookie jar. He's a freaking moron. I mean, the other thing too is that you and I as boomers remember Don Rickles.
Yeah.
And that kind of humor that was around in the 60s and 70s, that kind of humor is not accepted anymore. I mean,
No.
so they would say horrific things like that back in those days and get away with it because they didn't care about minorities and blacks. Sammy Davis Jr. couldn't get into a hotel until Frank Sinatra basically, stuck up for him and said, he's coming into the hotel." Those days are over. And that's the problem for his party and for the people that support him. They hate that those days are over.
Well, they hate that those days are over, but when it comes to comedy, there is a nuance to it. There are certain times, certain places, certain situations where you can say certain things, and other places and other times you can't. Don Rickles is from another era. We're in a different parallel universe right now. Now, this particular comic could have gotten away with those jokes in other settings, but not in front of a presidential candidate, in front of a crowd that's looking to vote for this presidential candidate. On top of that, not being a professional comedian, but after watching him that night, I know I'm funnier than that motherfucker. Um, but they weren't funny jokes. I mean, even for
but what
crude jokes, they weren't funny. They weren't well
they were
written. They
they were
weren't well
bad.
delivered. They were just bad jokes.
Well, the thought was that he was just sort of just trolling them at first. They were going to give him leeway and said he purposely did that, and then it's now apparent that he's just a flaming moron, a bad comic who's probably not going to have much of a career. He can keep up his podcast. He'll get the juvenile young men who will listen to him, but he's not going anywhere in life. But it was more than him. It was the entire rally. It was a disaster, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. And they're still talking about that rally today. I mean, so it was, yes, he angered the Puerto Ricans, but he also showed the world, a side that we haven't seen since the 20s and 30s. Nazism, KKK, all that stuff was on display that night. It was a. I can't say more than what people have already said. Your audience is a pretty smart audience. They've been watching the videos and reading the news. I can't add to how bad this was. All I can say is that I'm gleeful that he did that. I'm gleeful that the world got to see it, and it's been for the last month or two just one misstep after another with his campaign.
What I like best of all is it makes me look like Nostradamus because I'm famous for saying, just let that motherfucker talk. He'll burn himself down. And he does it every damn time. I mean, that whole event was 5 hours long. The comedian was the least of it because after that she got these other clowns saying she's the antichrist, she's a horrible person, some guy waving a cross over his head calling her the devil. I mean, it seemed like one of these radical racist skinhead fucking KKK rallies that you might see. And then Donald Trump gets on stage after about 4 hours and he goes fucking 80 minutes. And nobody knows what he's talking about because he's going off on tangents. He's talking about shit. Nobody knows what he's talking about, including Donald Trump. The whole thing was just an absolute shit show. It was a horrible thing. And as I've said, just let him talk. Let the people around him talk. They'll expose themselves for who they are.
Yeah, we just haven't seen anything like this. But the fact that I'm just going to use the polls, even though I don't believe the polls are right. The fact that he has any support says more about his supporters and where we are in the United States that we're willing to accept a fascist party. I guess the Republicans are no longer the Republicans; they're basically a fascist party at this point.
Right.
And that Americans are willing to allow this to happen is sickening. And the thing is, he's going to lose this race. You've been saying it for some time. I've had my concerns, but now I'm not that concerned, just judging by what we're seeing going on in the voting. But the problem is his movement is still going to stay alive. So I don't know who will be the next would-be dictator that will take over. I hope that the party dies. I thought the Tea Party had died out a little bit, but evidently it didn't. I don't think. I think it's going to take a cycle or two before this happens, and hopefully, smarter. We get back to the original Republicans who had that party, who we hated back then, and no longer are allied with now.
Well, as with Donald Trump in this country, I kind of felt like the country was ill, sick. Joe Biden takes over, and we're convalescing right now. We're getting better because Joe Biden is in. I think Kamala Harris comes in, and we get the opportunity to start again, to be healed and start heading the right direction. Not that we weren't heading the right direction under Joe Biden, but he's under rough
He's old.
conditions. He's
He's
old.
old.
He
He's
doesn't
old.
have the energy. He's coming off Donald Trump. He's trying to do things. The Republicans do nothing but obstruct him, much like they did with Obama. But I think when Kamala takes over, presuming she gets some of the down ballots working in her favor, it's going to be a new emergence of Democrats and liberals to actually get some things done. Donald Trump will step by the wayside because people will stop supporting him. The Republicans are going to take a beating in this election. They're going to have to go back and regroup, and hopefully that will give us some time to actually put some things together, get some things done. And once they do that, it's going to be hard to get the Democrats out if they continue to do good things for the people of this country.
Well, you're a lot more positive than I am. I saw an interview with Nikki Haley,
I'm a lot more positive than everybody, but that's too bad.
yeah. She was on some channel today, and she's still out there. I mean, she was willing to speak to him, but I have a feeling that she's going to rise in the next 2 years. I think that we'll take the House. If we don't take the Senate, we'll be in stalemate. We have a good chance of keeping the Senate, but we've got basically 2 years, and then the same nonsense is going to happen. They'll be hitting her from all sides with the amount of unlimited money, and the gerrymandering will keep a bunch of them in office. So I don't know. I don't have I had my faith in the American people is probably the lowest it's been in my life, though my faith in the people that are supporting Harris is certainly been renewed and restored. I just think that we're going to end up going back to politics as usual, but maybe we'll have some leeway as the Republican Party starts to tamp down the craziness that's been in their party for the last 9 years.
Well, you and I disagree on something here, and I will just ask you this. Nikki Haley is going to rise up through what party?
Well, I think what will happen is that the people who are allying themselves, the Republicans that are allying themselves right now to get rid of Trump, they don't like her policies.
No,
They just don't. So once she takes office and Trump goes away, I think it's going to go back to the usual. Let's get tax cuts for the rich people. Let's have unlimited oil and gas drilling. All the same stuff that we've had to put up with for decades now. The fight the same thing will be about the debt. We're going to see a debt fight like we've never seen before over the next couple of years. Um, I just think it's going to go back to that. There's too much money that's involved in controlling the government. And that's what I believe. I mean, which is okay. Hey, listen, we'll have that fight on ideas and the pendulum will swing back and forth. I'm rooting for Haley to get 8 years out of this. 8 years will make
not
a
Haley,
difference.
Kamala.
Not Haley. I'm sorry, Kamala. And I'm hoping, and if Haley is the one who rises, that's fine.
Well,
She's already shown who she is, and she's a coward.
here's here's how we differ. You're a little optimistic here, thinking that the Republicans can get burned down in 2024 and somehow regroup and gain some power in 2 years. I don't see that happening. This party gets burnt down. They're going to be scrambling around. They're not a unified party. You have the radical right and you have the people in the middle that are saying, I'm not Donald Trump, but support Donald Trump. They have a fucking mess. They are not going to get regrouped in 2 years. They'll be lucky if it's 4 years. They have a lot of work to do. They've got to reimagine their whole image. They can't come back as MAGA. They're going to have trouble coming back as hardcore conservatives because we got all these new young people coming in 2024 and taking the majority of the voting block in 2028. They don't want to hear conservative. They can't come back as strongly conservative as they were. They can't bring Liz Cheney back in because the young people don't want to hear it. They're going to have to come up with something totally different, and they ain't going to do it in 2 years.
Well, yes and no. So the demographics are certainly on our side. Um, in 2 years, where they'll play is for the independents. So they'll tamp down on their crazy. They'll run a boatload of money through their party. They'll change their image. They'll play to the independents who are currently voting for Kamala, but they're doing it because the choice is not a choice. So that's where I think they'll play. So they're not playing for the boomers anymore. They'll be playing for the Gen Xers, and
Right.
with in addition to the boomers, and then they'll start to try to put on a friendly face for the white males that are in Gen Z, because that's what they always do. They'll figure out some way of doing it. Listen, they've got think tanks. They've got billions. They want power. They'll figure out ways, and I think they will do it a lot quicker than you think they will. In 2 years, we're going to be hearing nothing but about the debt. I think we'll be hearing about some other thing like the Palestinians, but maybe something different. And then the battle will be on. I think Kamala wins again 4 years from now. It's just
Mm-hmm.
hard to take out a popular incumbent. But
Yeah.
I do think that the same issues we've always had will arise only because of the amount of money. Now, let me just say this though. If Kamala is smart and she packs the Supreme Court so that the Supreme Court revisits some of their prior rulings on unlimited money and things like that, we have a chance. If she keeps the Senate and they do a national where states may have to be required to have independent committees made up of both parties or anybody that wants to be on it to rethink gerrymandering. There are things like that can be workable from maybe the federal level, but you have to do the Supreme Court. So there's an if in what I'm saying. But if she comes in and she's Joe Biden and doesn't do anything about the Supreme Court, if she doesn't set up a way for success, then we're going to go back to what I just espoused that I think we're going to go back to.
Well, the reason why I think differently than you do is because you're looking at this based on historical experience, based on business as usual. But we know this
That's right.
election, everything that's going on right now is nothing like we've seen in history. Nothing like business as usual. We're in a different parallel universe. That's why I kind of see a paradigm shift of sorts going into the next 4 years. And I'll tell you why. We've had the most stressful, traumatic experience in the last 9 years, right? People are tired of it. So to suggest that we can expect people to behave like they did in past history, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see a dramatic shift one way. It may not be all Democratic, but the Republicans are going to have a hell of a time. They're going to have to be a whole different entity if they intend to get any power. And I'm talking about in Congress and I'm talking about in the presidency. Kamala will be reelected in 2028, save for some tragedy or something horrible happening. But the Republicans have to climb out of a deep, deep cesspool. They can't just say, okay, let's start up now. They got to repair a
Well,
lot of
no,
shit.
you're right. You're right in some respects. I just
No,
sort
I'm
of
right in
disagree
all
because
respects.
of.
See, here, this is how it goes. This is my show. I'm always right. So just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean the problem is the state houses and the states. If this election gets rid of a few senators like Cruz and Scott, great. She gets to Congress. It doesn't do anything about the legislatures, and it doesn't do anything about they control their elections. It doesn't change the gerrymandering. It doesn't change the fact that 2 years from now we could have a potential Republican House, a potential. I think that she is. I think she's running a great campaign. I think
Yeah.
she's running a campaign like Obama. But the Trump campaign is like nothing we've ever seen. But I think people are going to be exhausted. And at the end of the day, I don't have a lot of faith in voters going out and continuing to vote year in and year out through cycle after cycle. I've never seen it. I think young people will vote hard on this one like they did with Obama. 2 years from now, will they come out? Yeah, I wish they would. If they would, we could continue to hammer that party and get our way. But I just don't think. I just people are lazy. I mean,
Wait,
they'll fight now because the stakes are high, but I don't know that they will over the long term of the next few years.
no, I agree with you about that. One of the reasons we are in the position we are now is because of apathy, decades and decades of apathy. And hopefully people have learned a lesson from this. But here's the deal, Tony. After this election, you and I are kind of inconsequential. We're fighting this
Oh yeah,
fight
yeah,
for the future, for our kids, for our
yep,
grandkids.
yep, yep,
And
yep. You're right.
in 2028 and beyond, those kids are going to have to take over. There's not much we can do at this point. This is our last gasp to have an impact and try to right the ship. So we've got to lay it in the laps of those young people and hope they do the right thing. But there's not much you and I can do after this election.
No, no, no. I think we got to get past the Gen Xers. That's what I think. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of independents in Gen Xers. I think they're a lot like us Boomers. And when the millennials and the Z's take over, there's a lot of hope there.
Yeah.
But that's not till the mid 30s, 2030s, 2035, 2040, something like that. It's not in the 2020s.
Well,
So the Gen Xers have got to be where we are right now. And
yeah, but you
I think
understand
things are going to now change permanently.
the Gen Xers aren't as big a group as, in fact, I'm going to find
No,
out
they're
here.
not.
They're not as big a group as the boomers or the millennials. The boomers and the millennials are
Nope.
are pretty similar in size, but we're dying off at 5,000 people a day. Thank God for
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
so while the Gen Xers will have an impact, I don't think they'll have as big an impact as the millennials do, and the Gen Zs for that matter. The Gen Xers will be there, but they'll be kind of like a waning group, like the Boomers are now.
Well, the thing with the Gen Xers, they're in their 50s now. They'll hold the positions in Congress and state houses. The millennials are not there yet, where they're taking over as politicians. They're just not. And so that's why I say we've got to wait till the Gen Xers get to where we are right now, where they're dying out at 5,000 a day, which would be great because they're going to hold power for some length of time. It's just the way it is. They have the right. They're at the right age. They have the right income. They're at that place. I don't know what the oldest millennial is. I'm going to guess late 30s, maybe early 40s. So we're starting to see them come up. But I think where we are now leaving the scene, I think the Xers are still, even though they're not big, they're still going to take over the political positions, even though they're not a giant class of people in themselves.
Well, this is the way it breaks down. Gen X is about 63,000. Millennials is more like 75, 7 or 63 million. Millennials are about 77 million. And it says here Gen Z born between 1997 and 2012 represents 20% of the population as of 2023. So there's a lot of millennials and Gen Zs. And my point is I don't know, will they do the right thing? I don't know. There's nothing I can do about it. They're just like we were when we were young. It's up to us. We can either do a good
Yeah,
job or
yeah,
fuck it
yeah.
up, and we'll be
Right.
gone and dead, and that'll be their problem.
Right, but the political positions throughout the country don't come to a million political positions. So you have 63 million Gen Xers. They'll cover those positions for a few years. Hopefully, not very long. I mean, the oldest millennials are getting there. But listen. But the bottom line is that's all good. That's coming up. I think the Gen Xers are not quite as greedy as our group was. Our group was, yeah, I don't know what happened to us. We were the hippies and we marched on Vietnam and then somehow, we took over the world. Uh,
Old white men suck. Just say it.
Yeah, well, I'm Puerto Rican, so I don't want to. I don't want to be racist. I
I'm an
don't want
old
to be
white
racist.
man. I can say whatever the fuck I want. Old
That's
white
right.
men suck. We need to get them out of power.
Yeah, we do. We really do. So listen, Kamala being president. That that if nothing else, that sets an example for the women in this. The women are saving us, and the men are. There may be a backlash to that. Maybe, I don't know. But the women are coming out, and frankly, the women are taking over pretty much the entire United States. You cannot walk into any business where the women are not the majority. You go to a doctor's office, the first layer that you see are the receptionists and the nurses and the PAs and all that. They might not be the doctor, but they probably are. They're now like the biggest group in med school. So women are taking over, and frankly, they take their responsibilities seriously. I don't have a problem with that. I have come a long ways from my misogyny in my early years to where I am right now. I have nothing but glowing respect and hope that more women take over. And there are more women that are like us in their political views than there are women that are more like Trump. Haley's just an opportunist. I think she's going to go. I think people will see that for what it is. She may become a power in their party, but they're going to show her flip flops pretty easily. But there are more Democratic women, there are more progressive women than there are conservative women, and progressive women tend to be more educated. It's just that simple.
Yeah. Well, I know my general practitioner, my doctor, is a woman and she's younger than I am, and I couldn't feel safer. I've had male doctors of my age and older, and a lot of them are a pain in the ass. You talked about misogyny, and that's a bad word. But let's be honest, guys our age, there were periods of time when the common thought was misogyny. You've thought misogynistic things, and so have I back in the 60s and 70s. Hell, in the 60s, a woman couldn't get a credit card, buy a house, or buy a car. That in itself is misogynistic, but that's just the way it was. It's those people who haven't been able to let go of that and change their mindset as the times change. Those are the problems. I look back now and I'm appalled by it. I'm embarrassed by it. I think it's time women do take control. We've had our chance. Old white men have had our chance, and here's where we find ourselves. I've always said if you do something and it doesn't work, this seems like common sense, but most people don't do it. If you do something and it doesn't work, try something fucking different. And this is what
Oh
we
yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
are doing now with Kamala.
yeah. I mean, the thing that about women is when the divorce rates went up and we had more single moms, quietly, without a lot of fanfare, because it's our women, they got more educated. They started taking over more positions. They worked their way out of the secretarial pools.
Right.
They said, I don't want to be a receptionist. I want to be a nurse. And little by little they left. Now I'm a nurse. How do I make more money? Well, now I want to be a PA. No, well, now I want to be a doctor. And slowly but surely, we've gone from the hardcore women that were powerful back in the 60s and 70s to where it's not unusual now to see very powerful women. And Kamala is the vanguard of that politically. I think it's going to be the best thing in the world to have a woman. And I hope that when she gets elected, I hope she packs the court, and she packs the court with nothing but women, to be honest with you.
Don't you think she'll be don't get me wrong. I like Joe Biden. I didn't think he should run in 2024 back in 2020. But when he did decide to run, I
Right.
thought, well, we might as well keep riding this horse. And I think he'll win because more people hate and are fearful of Donald Trump. But Kamala Harris is a different animal than Joe Biden. It won't be a continuation of Joe Biden, regardless of what they say.
No,
I think
no,
she's more assertive. I think she's more
that's right.
aggressive. I think she's stronger. And I'm not saying that Joe Biden's not strong. He's just so old school and the old ways of getting things
That's
done
right.
in
I mean,
Washington.
look at it. Look at
They
his
don't
attorney
happen like
general.
that anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Right. You think we're not going to get another Merrick Garland?
Hell
We're
no.
going to get we're going to get somebody that's going to be younger and aggressive and actually do that job. We wouldn't be in this position had Joe selected a different and stronger attorney general who would have went after Trump in the first 2 years of
Absolutely.
that. Now Joe needs to go, and she's gonna. You're right. She's gonna chart her own way. I think there will be some things that are similar. I don't see how she's going to change much on her Israeli policy unless she decides maybe to keep weapons from Israel. I just don't can't see her doing that either. So there'd be some similarities, but certainly, hopefully, she's going to be louder and use all the tools, social media, all of it, to fight back hard like they've been fighting. I've been proud of her campaign. She has
Absolutely.
not pulled it. She has pulled no fucking punches whatsoever in this entire campaign. She's gone after him. She called him a fascist. She called him a danger to, and all those things she should have been calling her. And all the advertisements from Trump being in a nursing home. Have you seen that one? Where they
Yeah.
have Trump in a nursing home? Nothing was pulled. It was all they went after his vice president pick. Good for them, and they went after Project 2025. They did everything glowingly right. So in that respect, the energy and the strength that she's going to use, she's going to use the bully pulpit the way it should be used, and I'm here for it, to be honest.
I
So
think I
maybe you're
think
right.
I think I can honestly say and see if you agree with this. Kamala Harris has run the best presidential campaign in my lifetime. Conversely, Donald Trump has run the worst presidential campaign in my lifetime. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I have to go back to Obama. Obama had to beat Clinton out, Hillary Clinton out, and he did. So he had a real primary that he had to fight his way through. So I
Right.
have to give him credit for a very well run
No, he did a great
campaign.
job. There's no question.
I think Clinton did the same thing. They had to run through the campaign. But having said that, when you compare how much time she had and the campaign she's put together. Now, granted, she took, Joe Biden's campaign, but they brought in all the smart people and they made use of the tools that were out there. So yeah, it's close to me. It's close for me between the Obama campaign and the Harris campaign and the Clinton campaign. Which of them would be which would be? I think hers takes the edge. But Democrats tend to run pretty decent campaigns. You have to go back to Jimmy Carter to see a campaign fall apart. Oh, well, of course, Kerry and what's his name also didn't run a very strong campaign.
How about the
But
other side, suggesting that Donald Trump has the worst presidential
worse,
campaign in
but
history?
wasn't even close. It's
So,
not even close.
so let me ask you this: he's running the worst presidential campaign in history. Kamala, let's just say one of the best in history. In 80 or 90 days, she raised $1 billion. Donald Trump raised maybe 400 million. Those two factors right there. Please rationalize out for me how that suggests the polls are even. Those facts say the absolute opposite.
You've listened. You've been saying this right along. You've been consistent about the polls not being right. And if we go back and look at the polls, I think I agree with everybody on TikTok, yourself, and everybody that says the media wanted this to be a horse race, and they put the fear of God into everybody about it being a horse race. But maybe they did us a favor because there was this feeling of, my God, if we don't get out and vote, if we don't do something to get out and vote, we're going to get this guy back. But the reality is, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's going to be that close. I just don't see it being that close. So something is broken, and I think that what's broken is both the media and the pollsters who work providing information to the media. I
Let
have
me
no doubt about it.
let me ask you this: if November 5th comes and it's a landslide for Kamala Harris, how are you
Mhm.
going to feel at that point?
I'm going to feel like I listened to Mike,
Well,
and
yeah,
Mike was right.
but I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be angry. Not that she won, because she just did what I suggested she was going to do. I'm going to be angry about the media fucking with people's heads, manipulating people for 2 years. Because don't tell me MSNBC, Fox News, CNN couldn't get the same information and rationalize it out like I did or others have done it. They either are stupid, and that's not the case because they've got all the resources, or they purposely did this. Now, as you said, maybe they did us a favor. And people have said that to me before. They said, listen, maybe you shouldn't say it's going to be a big win because then people won't go out and vote. That's an insult to this audience that listens to this podcast. That is an insult to this country. We know the stakes. And to suggest that we have to fuck with people's heads just to get them to do the right thing is an absolute insult. So I don't buy that as an excuse, but I'm going to be angry if after 2 years, these people are proven to be just messing with our heads.
I listen, I totally agree with you. And that just shows you the importance of social media,
Yeah.
TikTok and YouTube. I listen to you, I listen to the Bulwark, I listen to Podcasts of America. I just, on and on and on. Hawk, all of them. We're not getting the media, the mainstream media is not providing the same information and the same rationality that the rest of you are. But they're going after you guys on purpose. This whole thing about a TikTok ban is just a means of getting control back and not letting the American people get the information they need to make smart decisions. I mean that I'm convinced of that. It's they want the control back, and that's where it's coming from. So you should be mad because you are a media figure. On the other hand, you should be patting yourself on the back for providing that rationality and providing a sense of how do I put this? Providing a sense of security for the rest of us who are starting to worry more than we should have.
Well,
When I started to worry too much, told you this many a time. When I start to worry, I turn mic on. I go, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
well,
And you're not the only one.
and that's my point. No, I'm not the only one. I don't want to claim to be the savior here. I'm not. I'm just what I'm doing is basically trying to make myself feel good by figuring this out and analyzing it and by telling other people. That's the thing that troubles me more than anything. Every day, all day, I get DMs. I got people coming to me and said I was so scared, and then you talked me down. You talked me off the ledge. My anxiety's got anxiety. I got one woman sending me a note saying, "You're an American hero." I'm not a fucking American hero. All I'm doing is telling the fucking truth. But these people are so terrified that this media is doing a disservice to these people by fucking with their heads constantly. And that's what makes me angry. If you're in the media, you should be doing some good for the people. And that's one thing that makes me feel good about doing what I'm doing is I get a lot of comments saying you did me some good, whether it be a little bit or a lot. It doesn't matter. The fact that I can do something to do some good, that's important to me, but it's not important to the media. And they make a lot of money and they have a lot of influence and they don't give a fuck how you feel. They only care that you watch and they continue to make money. And that's what pisses me off.
Well, what's really, I'm really pissed off at the media. Not as much as you are, perhaps, but I'm still not happy with them. I don't trust them. It's just that simple. And there's a good reason not to trust them. They're owned by the rich elite. But the fact was that we had to wait. You guys made a prognosis. You guys made a future forecast. And now you're seeing it come true. The voting is starting to happen and it's leaning in the way that you guys forecasted it would go. I think that's just brilliant. And that's why, when I had to sometimes walk away from reading too much like Smart News or watching Joe Scarborough or any of those guys, even the guy in the Bulwark he was starting to panic and he's a Republican.
Right.
And so because they're not using the same common sense that you are. You're looking and you go, this guy can't be this popular. You said months and months and months ago, abortion is going to be a big issue, and it is certainly a huge issue. You said his character is going to be a big issue, and look what's happened Madison Square Garden, all about character. You said the people that he surrounds himself with are going to be a big issue, and sure enough, as vice president select, the people from 2025, all the villains have come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And so you've made these forecasts, you've made this analysis. You're important, and you weren't the only one to make this
No, no,
analysis.
no,
And
no, no.
so my biggest concern, my biggest fear after the election is that there will be an attempt by the people who can control the media to go ahead and make some changes in social media. And my only hope is that Kamala recognizes that this is social media is one of the tools that help her get her win.
Well, and that's why I'm on more than one platform. TikTok was a means to an end. The TikTok was just to get some exposure so I could do the podcast. You're not going to see people going after YouTube, and my audience is growing pretty quickly on YouTube. Facebook and Instagram too. I don't really pay much attention to it, but the thing about it is when we go to the media and say you were wrong, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know what they're going to say? They're going to say, well, we just followed the polls, which is a bullshit answer because the polls that were wrong in 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, if that's your strongest source, you maybe want to rethink your fucking process because the polls aren't a good source. And that's why you keep giving us bad information. You know, the one strength I have here in doing TikToks and the podcast is this: I'm old enough where I don't give a fuck. There are people on TikTok. No, there are people on TikTok want to get media exposure, want to make a lot of money, looking for their future and for a career. There are people doing podcasts that want spots on CNN. I don't want to be on mainstream media. I don't need that. My ego is satisfied enough with what I've got, and I'm not going to go someplace where they're going to tell me what to say. I'm not doing it about money. I make a little money from TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that, and that's great. But I'm not looking to advance my future. I'm just looking to be here now and say the things I have to say and be one of the few people in this country that actually has full access to the First Amendment. Because I say whatever the fuck I want to say. I don't have a boss. I don't have family. I don't have friends telling me not to say it. My friends and family know better than to tell me not to say something because then they know I'm going to say it fucking more. But somebody's got to be able to stand up and say, no, this is fucking bullshit. This is ridiculous. And if I can serve any role, that's hopefully the role I can play here.
Well, you're going to have to be the counter because Jeff Bezos and the owner of the LA Times, and Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, they're going to be totally mortified after this election is over. And he just put
Yeah.
out an op-ed saying, "Look, we don't want to show bias as a paper, and that the fact that op-eds and endorsements don't mean a lot." Well, no, he's wrong. Op-eds and endorsements mean a lot. They add to the overall sense of where the election should go and who we should vote for. The idea of a newspaper is to tell the truth. And there's a truth here. You have one guy who's a racist fascist, and then you've got his opponent. You need to pick for the good of of not only your readers, but for the good of the country. So he just doesn't get that. So
No.
what's he going to do? He's not going to change. He's not going to change. He's not going to apologize. He's not going to let the Washington Post do anything. He's going to try to take out his competitors because that's what he knows, and his competitor is you.
Well, yeah, but see, I've got nothing to lose, so fuck him. Uh,
No,
I'll
no,
come out of the woodwork
no.
someplace and fuck him. But Jeff
You're
Bezos is a good example. People think, okay, he doesn't give an endorsement, and it was his call, not the editorial staff at the Post. It was his call, and the reason he didn't do it wasn't that it comes off looking like he's supporting Donald Trump. And I don't know that that's what it is. I think he's like everybody else, scared to death of Donald Trump and the prospect of him getting into office. Now, there was some word that prior to him deciding not to endorse anybody, there was a conversation between his space agency, Blue Origin, and some of Donald Trump's people. I'm sure there were plenty of promises made. Now, Jeff Bezos is clearly a smart guy. I don't know why he can't see what I can see, that Donald Trump has no chance. They aren't going to walk away from him until he's dead on the side of the road. They think he will come from the ashes and come attack them. They're pussy ass bitches. They're scared. And that's the problem in this world. You can't be scared. You got to be bold, look them in the face, and spit in their fucking eye.
Yeah, I mean, they know that he is bad for their business with his tariff plan and the rest of it, taking out migrants that work the fields, all that stuff. They know that. So, but they figure that their money protects them. If he gets elected, they can still retain their power. but they just don't seem to understand that if they had put their money towards defeating him, this would have been over months ago instead of them being cowards and laying back. He's bad for their business. Why wouldn't they have gone after him? Uh, tooth and nail, just go after this guy. But they didn't. And so they're cowards because they understand they've got billions of dollars and they will survive just fine under his. And then they can go ahead and just hire people to go and talk to Congress people and do what they've always done. They understand that. Even if Trump gets in office, they figure they can neuter his worst tendencies by just spending their money to bring people and get access to them. I hope that Kamala actually taxes the shit out of them, but more importantly, I hope she finds a way of sort of taking away a little less power from the rich. I mean, it's just that simple. They have way too much power, and it's gotten worse over the last 20 years. It's really started under Reagan, and it's continued to continue up. And really, Trump is the villain of now, but they have always been the villains of the
Yeah.
rest of us for a long time.
Donald Trump just brought it to the surface and exposed everything to everybody. And let's be honest, the Republicans are at fault here. They should have been done with Donald Trump on January 20th, 2021. Kevin McCarthy went and pulled him back in the fold, and that will be realized to be the hugest mistake for the Republican Party in their entire history. We are talking with Tony from South Carolina, a man of a certain age, former military, and a Puerto Rican. Now, under normal circumstances, the fact that you're Puerto Rican wouldn't be of any importance at all. But given the circumstances with the Madison Square Garden thing, it's nice to know that you're part of the group of people who was insulted greatly by our former president and current candidate. Um, that's something you wouldn't see Kamala do. Kamala's very smart and she's very concerned and compassionate about all peoples, which is what a president should be. I watched a good part of her campaign speech at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. And a lot of people said, well, she shouldn't do it there. She should be in Pennsylvania or whatever. And I think this was a good choice. This put an exclamation point, because this was supposed to be the closing arguments, put an exclamation point on this campaign because she happened to do it at the very spot that Donald Trump on January 6, 2021, incited a bunch of Trump-la-fuck motherfuckers to attack the Capitol. She came back and changed the whole tone and the whole experience in that space. I thought she looked extremely presidential, and I thought the speech was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, let's compare crowd size. First of all, Trump is at Allentown, and the venue that he's at holds up to 10,000. So as we talked about it earlier, there's 10,000 for him to start with. About halfway through, it'll be down to about 400 people. They'll be leaving because he's not. He's saying the same stuff. Her crowd size. She started off with a request to Federal Park Service for 20,000 people.
Right.
Then they upped it to 40,000 people. The estimate now is somewhere between, I don't know, 60 and 75,000 people showed up there. So the enthusiasm is certainly on our side. Her message was clear. It was not so much she doesn't need to introduce herself, but the fact that Trump is a danger, the fact that Trump has an enemies list and she has a to-do list. She took her standard stump speech and she just made it that much better. I thought she did a magnificent job, but I also thought that, I don't know, did you see Michelle Obama talk a couple days ago?
I did.
I mean, she's got an amazing bunch of surrogates traveling the country. We talked earlier about campaigns. Okay, I'm now going to agree with you that she's put forth the best campaign ever. Just based on the
I knew you'd come around.
I have to. Her speech tonight, I didn't get a chance to see it, but I've been watching clips since then. Was just incredible. She's an incredible lady. She made the case for why we need to go with her as opposed to that. She was inclusive. She said she doesn't make enemies. She makes people that she wants to talk to. That she's going to take people that don't agree with her and give them a seat at the table
Right.
rather than put them in jail like her opponent. I mean, just incredible concepts. Did I lose you?
No, you didn't. It's just this fucking touchy. We're fine.
Your
We're
face.
fine. Just
I
keep
hope
going.
that face comes up on a YouTube. So she did really well, and I watched clips from the people lining up all day for her. Happy, positive, enthusiastic, uh, just incredible. Got bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I don't know any place that can hold 75,000 people. A couple
No.
football stadiums.
Yeah.
So she's just this.
She's a force of nature at this point because people are
It's
desperate to be saved.
she is. She's everything that Trump says he wants to be. She is. She's going to save us. She's going to save us from Grendel the monster for sure.
And I think we can both agree here, and many of the men in the audience, that size doesn't matter, with the exception of crowds. Then it does matter, right? Can we agree on it? I think so. Uh,
Well, as a short guy at 5'6", my basketball career didn't, so size does matter in a few
yeah,
things.
yeah,
But yeah, I totally agree with you. She's pretty amazing. She's put together an incredible campaign. She has incredible people working for behind the scenes. She's got incredible people working for in front of the cameras. This has just been the most amazing campaign, and probably it's going to go down in history as something to emulate. If you're going to run for president, this is the way to do it.
absolutely. Well, and what she does is something that Donald Trump just cannot do. She does have good people around her. She listens to those people and she takes direction from those people. This is where the problem is for Donald Trump. Whether he has good people or bad people around him, it doesn't matter because he doesn't listen to shit. He makes the decision, he calls the shots, and he happens to be a dumb motherfucker, so he makes all the wrong choices, as we saw in the Madison Square Garden event. But we also see it in his trials too. He hires the best lawyers, but he doesn't listen to what they tell him, and he
No,
directs them
no.
to do things that they shouldn't do or wouldn't do under normal circumstances. They get sanctioned, they get disbarred. This is the problem. Everybody around Donald Trump lets him do whatever he wants. And this is why I always say just let the fucker talk. Let him do whatever he's going to do because he's proven every time he fails and every time he burns himself down.
Yeah, I mean, I live close to Augusta, Georgia, so we get a lot of the commercials. Every time there's a Trump commercial, there's a Kamala commercial. And his commercials are all the same. It's always
Yeah.
attack prisoners who are trans prisoners. I mean, that's it. I, that doesn't say a thing about the rest of us, you know? And her commercials are attacking him, but then another commercial come up about what she's going to do for us. So for every commercial he puts out, she puts out three commercials.
Right.
So and they're all always positive, where his are always negative. So I just don't see. It's just been I just hope it's a trouncing, a beating, and puts the Republican Party back in a hole. And I hope you're right. I hope they stay there for a couple of years. We kind of disagreed earlier about that because I think money speaks, unfortunately. But we'll see. I think we're on a really good path to victory. And
Well,
we
I think,
probably should move on to talking about, because she's going to need the Congress. We probably should move on and talk a little bit about the Congress
yeah,
and who should.
there's one thing I keep getting, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. Oh my God. Mike Johnson is not going to certify the election, and he's
Oh,
going to mess with it. And I've said this before, and it warrants saying it again. Mike Johnson has nothing to do with certifying the election. It happens
that's
to be
right.
the vice
That's
president,
right.
who happens to be
That's right.
Kamala Harris.
That's
Remember, it
right.
was Mike Pence back in the day. And the other part of it is that the new Congress will be seated on January 3rd, prior to January 6th. And when that happens, presuming everything we suggest, Republicans won't be in control of the House. I think that's the one solid bet that everybody is willing to say they are not going to keep the House. The Democrats will take control of the House so that on January 3rd, Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House. But even though, still, Hakeem Jeffries does nothing to do with certifying the
That's
fucking
right.
election.
And you can't protest a certification by a state by one person anymore. It takes, I believe, a third
A
of the
fifth,
House,
a fifth,
a
yeah.
fifth, and then the Senate the same, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, the bullshit that they pulled last time
They
is
can't.
not going to work. They can't pull it. So yeah, I don't know what his dirty little secret is, and that was just a stupid remark that scared the hell out of everybody for no reason.
But here's the thing that troubles me. Donald Trump keeps saying stuff, and people still keep getting scared. But every time he says shut, it's wrong. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. Why do we take a guy who's a pathological liar and every time he opens his mouth, we go, oh my, he's a fucking idiot. What he's talking about with Mike Johnson is a joke. Mike Johnson won't be a factor anymore. What he's talking about is getting Congress to or the House to do something to give him the presidency. This is all the same shit he tried in 2020 when he was the president and he fucking failed. Now we know what he's doing. They're prepared for it. They've got the legal team to take care of it. He thinks he's got a chance, but he's fucking delusional.
Yeah, there's an army of lawyers just waiting,
Oh yeah.
and try. They're gonna neutralize every attempt, either by at the state level or well, it's got to happen at the state level, but they're going to neutralize every attempt. They're there. They're going to be in the Indianas and the Nebraskas and all the rest of them. And these things will go to court relatively quickly, and the certifications will come. I don't, and I don't. There are some crazy states that might pull some shit, but their votes may not count. At the end of the day, I mean, the certification's got to be done January 6th, and that's the way it's going to happen with them or without them.
Well, let's take Georgia, for example. Everybody was terrified about Georgia. Oh, they're going to do a hand count, or they're going to delay the certification, or they're going to do this or that or the other thing. Guess what? All that stuff's been stopped in the courts. All that stuff that people were fearful of. This is what the Republicans say. They say, we're going to do this, this, and this. And it's usually stupid bullshit, but people still get terrified of it. You have to
Yeah, yeah,
understand these are all Hail Marys that have no fucking chance. Don't get afraid of this shit because the obstacles are in place, the legal teams are in place to stop this bullshit. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
yeah. And listen, Georgia changed their voting rules, but overall, I live next to Georgia. Kemp and Rathenberger are running a fair election.
Yeah,
Um, the votes, probably close to half the people in Georgia have already voted.
yeah.
And the votes are going to be counted. I just don't see the chicanery that's going to happen in Georgia. I don't know about other states, but certainly I think Georgia's going to be just fine. Now we need Georgia. Pennsylvania, I think it's just going to be a massive slaughter in Pennsylvania. I think there'll be no doubt after he insulted Puerto Rico. It's just that simple. He's going to lose Pennsylvania pretty handily. He's going to lose, and then so there. I don't really. I haven't heard of any single state. I think there was a congressman who was saying something about, oh, it was North Carolina. He was saying because of the disaster in North Carolina, they should just go ahead and give the electoral votes right to the Republicans, to Trump. What a bunch of shit that was.
They
So
wouldn't say
hopefully
that
that
if
ended.
if they weren't worried about it.
Yeah, listen, I hope that ends that congressman's career. We had damage done here. I lived. Hurricane Helene came through, did a lot of damage to where I live. Luckily, my house and no damage to me. I was out without power for a week, and then my daughter and her kids and her fiance came to live with us for another week because they had no power. And South Carolina hadn't done one thing about voting. They're just continuing on. If anything, they've tried to make it easier for people to vote with the understanding that they probably are not living in their houses and they probably can't do mail-in voting. So they've made it easier for people. I voted the other day. Not a single problem. I think there are people walking in and going and registering same day and voting the same day.
Yeah,
So at
yeah,
least as far as South Carolina is concerned, I don't, which is, it's, it, I have to say this about South Carolina. It's a really red state.
It
but it
is.
doesn't go. But it doesn't go crazy first. It goes crazy after 10 other states have gone crazy, and then
Right.
South Carolina goes crazy. So everything seems to be on the up and up here.
I
All
like
watches are
South. I love South Carolina. I go there frequently. My place in Savannah, Georgia, is very close to South Carolina. We go to Hilton Head. We go to Bluffton and Beaufort and all those places.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some wonderful
yeah.
places in South Carolina. Are you of the mind that a lot of people are that you say that Kamala should win Pennsylvania? Do you agree that that's the kind of pivot point? If you win Pennsylvania, you're
Oh,
going to win the whole thing?
I think you can't just win one state, but it's a big state, comes with a lot of electoral. I mean, if he wins Pennsylvania, I'd like to see them take North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and I think then we can call it a day. Nevada might be a little bit closer, but I don't know. He just insulted the Latinos down, and there's a lot of them in Nevada.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
know. I think it's going to be an electoral count route, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to be 270. I don't think it'll be 330, 350, something like that to whatever the other number is.
when I see people put up the maps on TikTok as far as the Electoral College, they're talking about Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, maybe North Carolina, maybe Georgia. They're talking about those swing states or the blue wall states, but they always have it set up with what is expected. Democrats get what they get, Republicans get what they get. But I think with what's going on in this country right now, I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. States that are presumed to be red that will suddenly flip blue, like a North Carolina. But I also think it's a reasonable thought that Florida could flip with all the bullshit going on down there, with everything that's on the ballot, with how Ron DeSantis is turning that place into a shithole. You can't afford insurance. You can't get the help you need to build buildings. It's not a great place to live. It's a wonderful state. It's a beautiful state, but they've turned it into a hard place to live in, to go
I
to
think
for
you're right.
tourism. And if
I think
Florida
you're right.
flips,
It's ball
fucking
game.
game's over. Yeah, game's
That's ball
over.
game. I see a lot of people saying, "Well, we just don't think the environment is right for Florida to flip," and I think that's bullshit. They got an unpopular governor. They've got an unpopular senator in Scott. They've got they've got a bunch of pissed off people throughout the state, are aggravated at the way that state's been run for the last 4 years. I think there's a good possibility, and then we have an abortion amendment on the ballot, and
Right.
we've got a pot amendment on the ballot. I mean, when is the environment going to be right if not now?
Well,
You
right,
know,
exactly. It's like when
you
they said, when before Kamala was named the nominee, people kept saying to me, I don't know if this country's ready for a woman, a black woman, to be president. It's 2024, motherfuckers. When
That's right.
is the time? And frankly, I've said before, I think this is the perfect time for Kamala because with all the shit going on the Republican side, the least of our worries are that she's a woman and she's black. She happens to be smart and articulate and strong. And this may be the perfect time to get a woman in that position because that's not the biggest issue right now. The biggest issue is fucking democracy.
Yeah, I mean, look, the winter's coming when you see the geese flying and the
Right.
leaves turning, and you see the signs for it. In Florida, the political winds are changing because you see in the villages, Democratic caravans in their golf carts. That
Right.
ought to be a sign, if nothing else,
Right.
is that that things are not the same as they have been in Florida. People are
Well,
no longer afraid of saying who they are.
I think I have a theory of why the villages are switching. I think it has to do with the potential damage to Medicare and Social Security. But I think more importantly is what Kamala and Joe Biden are doing about bringing down the cost of pharmaceuticals. Because
Oh
clearly
yeah, yeah,
clearly you got old people, but more importantly, that price of penicillin for the STDs is really important, and they're going through a lot of fucking
they
penicillin in
go
that
through a
place.
lot of penicillin. Yeah, yeah, they are. That is not that place is as hedonistic as you can possibly get. Those old people are screwing like bunnies down there. Yeah,
Wow.
I would not. There's not a place where I'd want to live. Well, I wouldn't want to live in Florida in general. For
No.
those that don't know, I was a meteorologist and an oceanographer in the Navy as well as a military officer. And where I live right now, I thought I was far enough inland not to be impacted by anything. And we hadn't been impacted in all the years that I lived here until Helene managed to find its way up to us and cause as much damage as it did. But I certainly wouldn't live in Florida or along the Gulf Coast.
Well, some people have suggested something, and it kind of makes sense. With climate change and more hurricanes and bigger hurricanes coming through, do you think we'll get spots in Florida specifically that get hit so often there's no point in rebuilding? We'll get towns that just no longer exist because it makes no sense to rebuild in them. Is that possible?
I I here's what I think is going to happen. When their insurance rates are going up, I noticed since July, my insurance rate has gone up $180. And I think
A year or
that was
month?
a month.
Okay, wow.
And I think that is yeah, so when my wife had an accident. So what? It hadn't gone up for a year after the accident. And now all of a sudden it jumps up 180. And I think that has to do with the damage done by Helene up here. Now, I didn't put in a claim. I didn't have that kind of damage. My roof was pretty new. I had one tree fall down. I removed the tree myself. But I think, yeah, I think at some point you're not going to be able to get insurance. And the only people that are going to build there are going to have to build hurricane proof houses. So I guess from what I read, there was one community that was actually built to withstand hurricanes. Their roofs are tacked down. They're high up. You don't get the main floor till you're about 8 foot up. All that stuff. They've got solar. Everybody there's got solar, so you can build hurricane-proof communities. But those homes are we're talking $1 million homes to build yourself. So that's what we'll probably see down in Florida. And who can afford to do that? I
Right.
couldn't go down to Florida.
No.
I could sell my house for quite a bit of money, but I couldn't afford to build something like that down there. So yes, the answer is they're going to be this. It's just a question of time, and the federal government and the insurance company and the economics will prevent. And then when you get a guy like Trump who looks at a state and says, "Well, that's a blue state. I'm not sending any disaster money down there, or we're not, or we're going to take apart FEMA, which is in Plan 2025." I think we're going to see a lot less support for people who live in disaster areas. So whether it be hurricanes, earthquakes, um, fires, tornadoes, I think there may be end up being a lot of support. But it's going to start with Florida. Florida is the bellwether for all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about the House, and I think it's pretty easy to believe that the House will be handed back to the Democrats. They will carry the majority. I think they could carry the
I
majority
do.
by as many
I
as
do.
20 to 40 seats. I don't know exactly. I'm taking a gut reaction to it. But you brought up the Senate, and there was a lot of people worried about the Senate. And then again, they're basing it on past history, and we're in a different realm right now. What are your thoughts about how the Senate's going to go?
Well, it's going to be close. I think Tester in Montana has definitely got a hard lift. I do think we have a good chance of taking Senator Cruz. He got his ass handed to him during the debate, and he's hated. I mean, they don't want him to go to any kind of sporting event down there. So I think we got a
Right.
good chance. I think we got a good chance of taking Scott in Florida.
I do too.
There is an independent running in Nebraska who says, but I think even if he wins, the only benefit to having him win is that he says he's not going to uh, be with either side. So that's
So he
okay.
so he'll be
The Joe Manchin
worthless.
type. Yeah, yeah, but he won't be in the Republican side, but he won't be. But I think he's more a Republican type, like Joe Manchin. So we'll see who he's actually if he's going to stay to his word. But I think he's going to end up losing in Nebraska. Um, I think there's about there's about another seven other races that are toss ups. There's Nevada, there's one toss up. The rest of them are all toss ups. I think that abortion helps us. I think enthusiasm helps us. I think the woman vote helps us. So I think we have a good chance of holding on to the Senate. Of course, the vice president will be Tim Walz. So that gives us something. But I don't know. It's a tough Senate, Matt.
Well,
out.
Arizona, we won't gain a seat per se, but we will gain power.
Yeah,
Gallegos is certainly
yeah,
going to kick
yeah,
Kerry
yeah,
Lake's ass. And
yeah,
while he's
yeah,
taking Sinema's seat, at least he'll be a true Democrat. And at
yeah,
least
yeah.
he'll be able to vote along with the rest of the Democrats as opposed to the
Exactly.
bullshit that Sinema did.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I think Lake has run a terrible, terrible race down there, and I don't think she's got a lot of support from the Senate Election Committee anyway. I think
Nobody
they, you
does.
know, no, no, Cruz didn't get any money either.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like they're if you pissed off if you pissed off McConnell, you weren't getting any help, and Cruz has pissed off McConnell enough times that there was no money going his way. A guy was crying on TV. So I have a lot of hope that we're gonna have keep keep the Senate. It might be one vote, might be two, extra, but that's okay. So long as we keep it. And if we keep it, and I say this every time I'm on your show, her first order of business is figure out a way of packing the Supreme Court. It does her no good to be president of the United States if she doesn't have a Supreme Court that's going to go along with her as well.
Well, I think there's one step before packing the Supreme Court and one step before codifying Roe v. Wade. And she acknowledged this, and I think it's important. She talked about getting rid of the filibuster. That's kind of important to do that if you want to accomplish the other two things, this whole thing of needing
Yeah, yeah,
60 votes in the Senate to pass something. The filibuster is an antiquated,
it is.
archaic piece of shit that just
Yep,
causes people to get nothing done.
yep,
Now, the Republicans and Democrats are for the filibuster, depending on where they are in the situation. If they're in the minority, whether it be the Democrats or Republicans, they like the filibuster. But the filibuster does nothing for the country because a lot of stuff doesn't get done. And let's be honest, the reason people are in the Senate and in the House is to get things done. Why would we have an obstacle to not get things done? And the filibuster has to fucking go if we
yeah,
want to make any
yeah.
serious changes.
It's not in the Constitution, unlike the Electoral College. So
Right.
this is a Senate rule, and I without Biden, and this is that difference where she's not going to be Biden. I think we have a good chance of getting rid of it. But I don't know if we don't keep the Senate. What do you think happens then?
Well, if we don't keep the Senate, Democrats probably won't try to get rid of it because it will work in their benefit.
Exactly.
And that's therein lies the problem with, it's kind of like saying, let's have term limits for members of Congress. Well, that
Right.
sounds nice, but the members of Congress have to vote it in. So they aren't
That's right.
going to do that. Everybody says all we need is
No, they're
term
not.
limits. Great. I agree with you. Never going to happen. They're not going to
Yeah.
hurt themselves. So you're right. If the Democrats don't get the Senate, they're going to want the filibuster to save themselves. And I understand why the Democrats and Republicans want to do it. They don't want the other party to run roughshod. But I think we have to
Yeah.
suck it up and allow that possibility to happen against us as well as for us, just to get out of this fucking morass of the
Well,
filibuster.
I totally agree with you. Let's say they take the Senate and they get rid of the filibuster. It doesn't do shit for them because we'll have the House of Representatives. So they
Well,
won't change it either.
it does do something for them because um, in order to codify Roe v. Wade, don't we need 60 votes at this point to do that?
Well, I'm saying if the Republicans take over, let's say they get the Senate
Yeah,
by one person. I don't think they're going to change a thing. I think they're
well,
going
I
to want the
agree.
status quo, right? Now, if we take over, I think you're right. I think that that order of business should happen. But it's already kind of going away. It's already going away for Supreme Court judges, judges in
Yeah, they're
general.
carving it
Everybody's
up a little
rushing.
bit. They're carving it
Yeah,
up a little
yeah,
bit.
a little bit.
Well,
If you
well,
want to pass a financial bill, you can pass a financial bill if it's related to current spending, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's slowly going away on its own anyway.
but here's the thing: when the filibuster first started, it was a much different animal than it is now.
Yes,
You
you're
had to
right.
stand up and talk for hours and hours. It was tough to do. And then they ultimately just made it a fucking rubber stamp.
That's right.
I'm calling filibuster. So now we can't do it. Nobody had to put in any work or do anything at all. So if they don't get rid of the filibuster, they can peel it back to what it once was because the filibuster wasn't a commonly used thing back in the
No,
day.
no,
Now it's
no.
on everything because they
Right,
weaponized the filibuster. And that's the
right.
Republicans doing that.
Yeah, we shouldn't allow one senator to be able to hold up military
Fuck no.
promotions over our boards. That was fucking ridiculous. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's time to go away. No one person should hold up the business of the country. And like you said before, unfortunately, it's pretty much been Republicans right along because they have no ideas.
Right.
So their only idea is a tax cut. But they don't want any ideas to go through that are popular because it'll cost them elections.
Right, right. Now, on the other side of the coin, we talked about the Electoral College, and people say we got to get rid of the Electoral College. I was one of those people that said that, but then I was informed that that is in the Constitution, and that's an
That's right.
entirely different thing to get rid of the Electoral College if it's in the Constitution. That's a lot more work.
It's not going to happen. But there is a compact going around. I think we're up to 20 states have signed the compact. And basically it says that we will award our electoral college members to whoever wins the popular vote. So they need the majority. I don't know. They need, I think, 30 states to agree to this compact. So there is a workaround that's out there. We just, but I don't know that the red states are going to sign on to this compact because they know that they have lost every popular vote going back for decades. So I don't know, but there is something out there.
Well, and I think that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now out of Donald Trump and the Republicans and all the bullshit going on. This is their last gas. They're flailing now because they know they're drowning. They're going to go down for the
Yep.
third time, and they're fighting in every way and any way they can. This is something we're going to have to deal with between now and November 5th. And after Kamala wins, it's still going to be going on to a certain extent, whether they claim it was a rigged election or whatever. Now, people are worried, well, he'll just do what he did in 2020. Just remind folks it didn't work. And it's a much different situation because Joe Biden's in charge as opposed to Donald Trump. I think people are fearful of them saying it's rigged and doing all the same stuff, but I don't think it has the strength or the impact that we saw in 2020.
No, I'm personally, I'm hoping that he in fact does that. It'll show how weak of a person he is if he just goes
Absolutely.
ahead and does that. I don't think he's going to have, Giuliani or any of those people go and fight for him at the court. As soon as he loses, I think his campaign people who are professionals, I think they're out of there. I think they'll say, well, we lost, bye. And I think he's going to be abandoned
I do
by
too.
traditional Republicans. And so the next big fight frankly, is going to be to start. It's going to be in the state houses across the country.
Right.
We lost a lot when we allowed them. When I voted the other day, um, I voted straight Democratic ticket. Probably half of the ballot were for positions like county treasurer,
Right.
county sheriff, and all that. It was all Republicans, all the way down. We've got to fix that. And I think that is something that the Democrats are going to have to take on board and make that a mission and start to get back and get into these rural areas and into these red states and take that back because that's really the long-term fix. That allows us to work around the Constitution. That allows us to get that Compact for America passed, where a red state now, the legislature is now controlled by blue rather than red, and they go, yes, we want this compact, so we're gonna go ahead and sign on to it. And that's really the next giant fight. And I think she's got it. I think she's young enough to understand that.
Well, don't you think that, you're saying, okay, we got the federal level, assuming Kamala wins and we get the down ballot and all this stuff, but we got to worry about the state legislatures. Don't you think if the federal level goes the way we think it might, doesn't that kind of change the culture? It may take a little while, but that doesn't that trickle down to the states too?
No, no, because Obama won with a popular mandate and nothing trickled down to the states. The states are an impediment. The states control their own. elections. That's in the Constitution. So the only way to ensure that the elections continue to be done fairly without hindrance from the state is to start to take over the state houses. That's where your demographics will come in. Your X's and your millennials, as they come into power, perhaps they're the people who will go into politics at the state level. And because right now you can have a monkey running as a Republican here in the state of South Carolina, and you can have a Nobel Prize winning anything. Let's say a Gen Zer who's popular and has 20 million people following him, and he still would lose here in the Carolinas because it's just so gerrymandered.
No, I agree with it'll take a while. It won't happen overnight. But again, like I said before, comparing what happened during Obama and what's happening in 2024, we're talking two entirely different worlds. The climate is entirely different. Obama didn't have Donald Trump to run against, and Donald Trump not only is going to lose to Kamala, but he's destroying the Republican Party. The
Yes,
Republican
he is.
Party
He is,
has more to do than beat the Democrat now. They've got to
yeah,
reprove themselves as legitimate.
he's destroying the national Republican Party, but he's
Right.
not destroying the Republican Party in the states, and nor is he destroying, or she's not destroying the money infrastructure that we have just weaved our way all the way back to where money is the source of all evil in politics. That is not destroyed, and so therein lies where the Democratic Party is going to have to go back and rebuild fences with people like the white blue collar workers. With I don't know, white males. White males are a problem. They for whatever reason. But the good thing is white males tend not to vote like white females.
Right.
We have work to do, and if we're going to, Kamala is a great beginning, but I don't think it changes what has always been before, which is we got to get money out of politics.
I heard Obama a long time ago. He was interviewed by Mark Maron on what WTF, the podcast. And he said something people have to understand. People want quick fixes, but nothing in government happens quickly. It could take 5 years. It could take 10 years or 15 years. And that's what I'm
That's right.
thinking about, the entire culture of the country. We're going to see a paradigm shift, but it isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take
No,
time as the young people come into power.
you're so right. It's gonna be in the 2030s before we start to see, as we talked about again, the us die out. We'll be dead. You and I will be dead, and then it's the turn of the Gen Xers to go away, and then we have big hope that people won't change, that the Gen Zers and the millennials continue to be as progressive as they are today. If that's the case, the country is going to be better served. We may see a national health plan. Now we may start to catch up with Europe in the
Right.
way that European socialism is not a bad thing. We kind of have socialism now with Social Security and Medicare, and it's those are the programs that the billionaires all want gone because that's money that they would have access to. But if once they take over, and hopefully we start to look at the benefits of having a more equity between the rich and the not so rich.
People always worry about the Social Security, and if the Republicans get in control, they talk a good game. They chased the Roe v. Wade thing for years, and then they became the dog that caught the bus, and they didn't know what the fuck to do. I think overturning Roe v. Wade may be the biggest issue in the history of this country, as well, in my lifetime anyway, since 1960, and it's going to have an impact on this election. I would say if you fucked with Medicare and Social Security, given how many people are on it or going to be on it, I think that would be a bigger issue than the abortion issue.
No, listen, they've talked about it before. You remember George W. Bush had some plans for Social Security, and it cost them the House of Representatives.
Right.
So yeah, I agree. I don't think they expected the backlash of Roe v. Wade. But I don't think they expected for the states to get as harsh and give that kind of harsh treatment to women as they have. They didn't expect Texas to go this way, and Ohio and the rest of them. And so you're right. Abortion has been the big issue. They've never touched Social Security and Medicare, but they do it in different ways, like Medicare
Yeah.
Advantage. I don't know what you're on. Medicare Advantage is a boom for insurance companies to make money. I'm on straight up in Medicare, and I've never had a single problem. And Medicare Advantage is much more costly. That's how they slowly make money out of something or slowly kill something by
Well,
making it so expensive that they have to make changes.
I need to talk to you about that further because I'm 64, but will be 65 in April. So I do have to get Medicare, and I'm not sure exactly what the best route to go. I keep hearing
Medi-
about Medicare Advantage, and I've heard many people say, yeah, don't do that. That's fucked up.
yeah,
Um, so,
yeah, we'll talk about it. But bottom line, to anybody listening, Medicare, straight up Medicare with a supplement insurance covers everything. That's what my wife has. That's what I have, and you're good to go.
when you say supplement insurance, is it a supplement through Medicare or is it a third party?
No, it's a private insurance. I pay $120 a month for my wife's supplement. Being retired military, my supplement insurance is paid for by my service. But yeah, you pay a little like $150. Medicare covers generally 80% of your Medicare costs, and then the supplement pays the other 20%. And generally, you don't have to pay fees up front, co-pays and all that shit. You don't have to get referrals. You don't have to go back. You don't have to be in network. Where I live, every doctor, every specialist, every hospital takes Medicare. So I don't see where that's a problem. The problem is that the Republicans, with things like Medicare Advantage, make the Medicare program so expensive. They go, look, it's killing our budget. We have to do something to change it. Well, they're not going to change the Medicare Advantage. They're going to try to
No.
put more people on Medicare Advantage because they all have buddies running the insurance companies. They're going to go after regular Medicare, and make the cuts there. And that's why it's important that we continue to have Democrats in office to protect things like that. You're like you said, you're just getting to that age where you're going to have to make that decision about it.
Yeah.
And yet, as smart as you are, you're a little confused because you're probably starting to get flyers from the Medicare Advantage people.
Oh,
The
yeah.
good thing is that you vote your own interest, and by voting for Kamala, you're voting for Medicare. And with any luck, that'll be something else. Whoever she puts in charge of Medicare will go and go, you know what? We need to get rid of these Medicare Advantage programs. They're not helping senior citizens. I get probably 5 or 6 envelopes a week on Medicare Advantage programs because we're in the enrollment process right now. So, but that's all tied politically. I mean, this didn't happen without a political decision that allowed Medicare Advantage to begin. And it was Republicans who allowed that to happen. It was a
Wow.
privatization of Medicare.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to worry about, and I think one of the things working against the Republicans, as much as there might be baby boomers that like the Republican Party and even like Donald Trump, like down in Florida, they're thinking twice. Yeah, but Medicare. Yeah, but Social Security. People are nervous about that, very nervous about that, and even if they are strongly Republican, hopefully they're going to vote with their best interest, and they know the
Okay, so let me
Republicans
ask
are
you.
trying to fuck them over.
So let me ask you, what wins out, tribalism or self-interest?
Well, common sense and intelligence would suggest that self-interest would play out, but
Should.
it should. But I've also said the most disconcerting thing I've found out since the rise of Donald Trump is just how many stupid people there are out there.
Yeah. So tribalism.
Yeah,
If you're on
you're
that
probably
side,
right.
tribalism, they don't give a shit about their self-interest. They it's self-interest that is being exploited to get them angry, and yet they vote against their own self-interest. So tribalism seems to be a primary social force in the United States today. And it's unfortunate that because of their tribalism, with the rest of us have to pay a price. So imagine if Trump gets back in office. It's the tribalism that caused that. They're voting against their own interests. So
Well, all you have to do is talk to Trump and you just, whenever I talk to them and they say the things they say, I just almost have to laugh because it's so ridiculous and so stupid and they just don't get it. And you can't convince them they're wrong.
no,
Uh,
no,
in
no.
those cases, what can you do? The tribalism wins out. And, I wish we could let those people who vote for Donald Trump to have Donald Trump in their own little fiefdom someplace. Put them in Florida where nobody else can afford to live and let them live under Donald Trump and see what the fuck they got because they
I
deserve it.
would love that. I would love that. I would love to be able to take all the Trumpers and put them and say, okay, we have a reservation out here in the Southwest. That's where you'll be, and you'll live exactly the way your dear leader wants you to live. And it unfortunately doesn't work that way. I've slowly, and I'm sure the audience is the same way. I feel sorry for them. I pity them, but I keep them out of our lives as much as possible. My best
Uh,
friend that I work with is a Trumper. I can't talk to him about this stuff. And then, in fact, I get so angry at him when he talks about it. My plumber who comes over, a young guy, maybe 32, 33, great guy, good looking, handsome. He's going to vote for Trump, and he's just a white kid, and we go back and forth, but there's just a blockage. There's something that's just not. There's something that's missing. So I just keep them out of my lives as much as possible. I never talk politics. I never talk it in social media. I post where it's safe to do so because I just don't want the aggravation of having to deal with stupid people.
no, I get it. Every time we go someplace where we know there's going to be a Trump bumper, my wife will always say, "Don't talk about politics." I go, "I never bring up politics." But if they come in my face and say something categorically stupid, the decent thing for me to do is try to fucking correct them, get them to understand the truth as opposed to the bullshit they're trying to spew.
Yeah, well, that you and I both know that's a waste of your time because
It
there's no way
is.
it's nice. It makes you feel good to be able
I like to
to
embarrass
out,
them.
yeah, embarrass them. But at the end of the day, it's worthless. We see these interviews all the time where people go to Trump rallies and they ask them, "Well, what's DEI? Why is that affecting you? How many trans people do you know? Why is that even an issue for you?" And they can't answer it because they're stupid.
Yeah, they
And
are
so,
stupid.
because again, it comes down to the tribe. They're gonna go with their tribe one way or the other. And it's a shame that the United States, Trump really exacerbated it. We were always like this, I think.
Yeah,
But
I do
I
too.
think that the other side managed to keep the crazy and kept the dials down. And they used dog whistles, but they were dog whistles that they could say, well, that's not really a dog whistle. You're being a little too sensitive.
Yeah.
They were smart about that kind of stuff. And now it's wide open. I think Madison Square Garden was an admission of defeat. I've heard this said
I
before,
agree.
and
I
they said,
agree.
"Well, fuck it, we're going to have a party. And we're going to let our freak flag fly." I think that's what that was. And they said, "We're just going to." I'm surprised they didn't let that comic use the nasty word for
Yeah.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Because fuck it, why not? Why not have a party? We'll probably see one more party like that.
Yeah.
I hope
Probably.
so. Hope so before the election. I hope they let it go again.
Let that motherfucker talk. Well, Tony, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational
Yes,
Boomer
sir.
podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to enlighten us with the views of a Puerto Rican man of a certain age with a military background in Southeast United States.
Well, listen, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a joy to see you. It's always a joy to know that there's a smart audience out there paying
Yeah,
attention. I'll look at the comments a couple days from now, and I'll go, man, that was worth every second of
absolutely.
time. And just to be with you is always just a pleasure, and always makes my day.
Well, when I hear people say, um, well, I got this audience, I got this bigger audience. There are bigger audiences out there, but I guarantee you, mine is the smartest audience because I don't really allow Trump humpers to get in too much. And people say, what good does that do if you don't teach the Trump humpers anything? And the fact is, you can't. The only thing we can do is try to pull together people of a like mind and give us a little more power, a little louder voice, and do the best we can. And we've been doing that for 3, 4 years on the podcast and on TikToks. And when it comes down to it on November 5th, I think we can all take personal credit for it because we changed this motherfucker.
Yeah, I think you do a good job of educating people and bringing the rhetoric down and using common sense. And I'm glad to be, a part of your show every now and then. And the good news is you're not in this for anything other than the good of mankind. You're not in this for appearances on bigger shows or anything like that.
Now,
So
I will t-
God bless you. Keep doing the good work that you're doing.
I will tell you this: if MSNBC said, because they had Political Girl on CNN and all that stuff, and that's
They
fine,
did.
she's
Yeah,
in
I
a
like
different
her.
realm. I like her
Yeah.
too. But if CNN or MSNBC came to me and said, "Do you want to be on the show once a month or once a week?" I go, "No, I don't," because as soon as I go on there, somebody's going to say, "Well, you can't say that." Then I'm going to say,
Oh, you'll be
"Fuck you," and
banned.
leave. I would be
You'll be
banned in
banned.
an hour. Yeah.
Like that other fellow from the other day, right? On
And
CNN.
people are enticed by fame and money and stuff like that. I'm at a point, I tell people, I said, listen, man, when you're young and full of testosterone and lack intelligence, you're all about fame and fortune and all that stuff. What I've learned coming to the age of 64, 65 years old, the real joy is having enough to do the things you want and total freedom to do what you want. I don't want to have to bow to anybody because I am going to make a lot of money or that I'm going to get some exposure. I've got more exposure than I ever could have imagined. So I'm cool. I can do one thing that Republicans can never do. I got enough. I'm good.
Got
I'm
enough.
fine.
That's it. That's got enough. That's why I like being here. We're in the same position. We have
Yeah.
enough. We're not super wealthy. We have to worry about how we're spending monthly bills, but we're retired, and that gives
Yeah.
us time to just think and contemplate and see what good we're doing. My big thing is working with kids. You know that
Yeah. Yeah.
you've seen that I'm a big animal lover. I get to do those things because I have just enough to allow me to do those things. So once again, audience, thank you for listening to Mike. Mike is an amazing man. I've met few. I have only met a few like him in my lifetime who are unselfish and willing to give themselves. He does this day in and day out. I'm happy to call him my friend. I'm also happy that I've met him in my life.
And thank God for good DNA and that we of all the things we don't have, we are extraordinarily good looking.
Oh yeah, well that goes without saying.
That
They
goes
just
without
have us
saying.
on
Yeah.
the bigger shows just because of our looks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Tony, thank you very much. For those of you
All
listening,
right.
thanks for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.